who has been your favorite fantasy football wide receiver to own?
Right here.
Moving on to a guy that A.J. Brown hopes he ends up as, or at least close to, Jerry Rice. There was an awesome Reddit thread talking about Jerry Rice and how good he was. It says, this is posted by bald_man_cometh. Great name there on Reddit. Per Pro Football Reference, between 1986 and 1995, Jerry Rice finished as the number 1 wide receiver 8 times and the number 2 wide receiver twice. I don't know what scoring format that is based on, but if it's true, that is insane. Has another player had a similar run? And this got us thinking maybe of a run like that for a past player or a wide receiver that was really near and dear to your heart. So, Johnny, my question is, who has been your favorite fantasy football wide receiver to own? Maybe for production similar to Rice, or maybe just because this guy, has an emotional attachment for you.
The only guy that, we've been playing fantasy football for over 10 years now. So I kind of had to go into my bag and see exactly which guy that I would want to talk about the most, that I really had that connection with, that was elite. And I came with I had to go with my man right here. When I got the little Funko doll, my man Larry Fitzgerald. When I first got,
I had a feeling you were going to go this way.
When I first got into fantasy football, I didn't know a lot. I knew some players, I didn't know a lot, and so Larry Fitzgerald was actually the second pick that I took that year in the second round because he was going higher in drafts, and he ended up killing it that year. That was with the Kurt Warner days where Fitz was, getting all those long bombs, and he did that for quite a few years, and I was able to have him for 2 to 3 years consecutively there in the beginning, and then I started to go away from the Cardinals players because they weren't playing that well for fantasy. So that would be my answer. He did produce quite a bit, and listen, up to 2 years ago, Larry Fitzgerald was still the wide receiver, a wide receiver 2 that was going in the back half of draft. So definitely love the run that Larry Legend has had. He's definitely a fan favorite, one of my favorite football players all time. Love watching that guy. It's just been a lot of fun, and he was really, really fun in fantasy too. But
yeah,
Travis,
Larry Legend, man. Hey, I love that guy. That's a great pick, Johnny. For me, I kept it real. I kept it both ways. I wanted a guy that produced, but I wanted a guy that I had a piece of in the past for sure. And this guy's very near and dear to my heart, and that's Calvin Megatron Johnson, man.
Ooh,
Calvin Johnson was one of just everybody, especially in redraft leagues, wanted a chance to get Johnson in his prime. And if you look at the stretch, 731 catches, over 11,000 yards, 83 touchdowns in his career. That's over 1,300 lifetime points in fantasy football for PPR. Between 2008 and 2013, Johnny, he was the number 1 wide receiver twice. He was the number 3 wide receiver twice, and he was the number 6 wide receiver in fantasy football. And he was on my first fantasy football championship as somebody playing fantasy football. My team I had Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson.
Oh, we got the double dip that chip.
Yeah, and that was aptly my name was Double Dip the Ship.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a good time.
I
love having a piece of Calvin Johnson.
True confession, I actually never got to own any pieces of Calvin Johnson, unfortunately.
Oh man.
Because that was back kind of in the heyday of where it was like you needed to take a running back early. Like that was the whole thing, was running back early. And so I never even gave a thought of going to Calvin Johnson ever because he was going in the back end of the first round. And so unfortunately I never got to own him, but you're right. He was so fun to watch.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Chelsea, when we talk about this topic of a wide receiver or at least past historic or a guy that's near and dear to your heart, do you have somebody that comes to mind for you?
Oh, it's so interesting. I don't think I've been in fantasy football long enough to have like a decade-long guy. I was just thinking like what it would mean to have somebody on your roster, especially in a dynasty format, just to like luck out and get
right.
10 years. Holy cow. Or I can't even think of a guy that's been as consistent or as prolific just in the duration of my time in fantasy football that's been like the overall guaranteed that guy is going to go like first round forever. There's been those wide receivers, but 10 years, holy cow. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think now, like, my question actually goes to like, what rookies now, or do you think have this type of like 10-year, decade-long potential? That you could imagine
staying
right
power.
now, if you
DJ Moore.
if you could put a bet on like which of the rookie class would be in our conversation as elite for the next decade.
Yeah, and I think you got to look at, it's not just the talent, right? Johnny mentions DJ Moore, and I would love if that was the case, but DJ Moore is tied to a guy like Teddy Bridgewater now. So do we really trust it?
Fine. He is a
Wait,
good
hold on. He's good, but like Matt Stafford was tied to Calvin Johnson, who just throws the ball at an enormous rate down the field all the time. Jerry Rice was tied to 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Okay. Right. And so that's why his consistency. So I love that love DJ Moore.
No.
I'm talking about elite level play for 10 years. You got to be tied to somebody, right? So we got to be thinking about situation as far as quarterback they're tied to and things like that. But
I do agree with you in that talent. Yeah, sure. I do agree with you in that. I don't think, based on the NFL today, I'm not sure that we'll ever get that type of production ever again, where a wide receiver is the top of his class.
Julio Jones is
pretty close. AJ Brown was pretty close before he went psycho, and
AJ, or you mean Antonio Brown?
Or Antonio Brown, yeah. Sorry, I don't wish that juju on AJ Brown. Don't do that. Don't do that. No.
Those are fair comps, I'd say, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Julio's a guy that I would think of next. Is like, okay, this is the guy that maybe could get there. And Michael Thomas has some staying power. It'll be interesting to see what happens after Drew Brees.
Yeah.
But Michael Thomas is a guy that's really building a repertoire up of consistent play. However deep his routes are, or however many Twitter battles he gets into.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.